Have you ever looked in the mirror and thought, I don't recognize this version of me sometimes? The people who destroy your life don't steal anything. They simply ask you to give pieces of yourself away. And the scariest part, it all begins with something that seems harmless. Not everyone ruins your life by taking something obvious. Some do it slowly, quietly, by asking you to let go of your peace, your boundaries, your identity. They don't stab you with a knife. They smile, they speak softly, they ask for little things. Do this for me. Could you change this one thing? Just stay here where it's safe. And because you care, because you're kind, because you want harmony, you say yes. Once, then again, then 100 times until one day, you look around and realize you've built a life entirely on what others want and buried your own soul beneath it. Carl Jung once said, nothing has a stronger psychological influence on their environment and especially on their children than the unlived life of the parent. But it's not just about parents. Anyone can project their fears, their regrets, their emptiness onto you and call it love, support, or what's best for you. You think you're being kind, you think you're being good, but in reality, you're abandoning yourself, and it often starts quietly. A partner who says they love you, but slowly asks you to shrink your dreams, so they feel more secure. A friend who always needs you, but never truly shows up for you in return. A family member who claims to want the best for you, but shames you. When you choose a different path. At first, you comply because you fear losing them. But little by little, each small sacrifice erases part of you. Until one day, you realize you didn't just lose time, you lost yourself. And the most dangerous part, it all began with what seemed like innocent requests. That's why today, we're exposing 5 psychological asks that look small on the surface, but are massive red flags underneath. And the moment you spot them, you'll begin reclaiming your freedom. Let's start with the first, stay the same for me. We uncovered how the phrase I miss the old you can actually be a subtle form of control. Now, let's look at what your personal growth can trigger in others and why it sometimes scares them, more than it inspires them. When someone says, I miss the old you, they may really mean, I miss the version of you who didn't have boundaries, who didn't challenge me, who didn't make me question myself. Carl Jung once said, resistance to the organized mass can be affected only by the man, who is as well organized in his individuality as the mass itself. In plain words, when you start organizing yourself, setting standards, building discipline, listening to your inner voice instead of following the crowd, people who are scattered inside will feel threatened. Your strength highlights their weakness. Your clarity reveals their confusion. Your courage reminds them of what they've been avoiding. And instead of facing their own stagnation, they'll try to pull you back down, not out of hatred, but because your evolution terrifies them. You begin focusing on your health. You stop drinking every weekend. You spend time reading, learning, creating, growing. And suddenly, the friends who once supported you now say things like, you've changed, man. You think you're better than us now? No, you don't think you're better. You've simply realized you're worth more than the cycles that once held you small. Maybe it's family. You choose a new career. You move to a new city. And your loved ones say, are you sure? You're not like those people who take big risks. But the truth is, you are now. Because you're becoming who you were always meant to be. Not the quiet version of you that existed only to keep others comfortable. Here's the deeper truth. When someone genuinely loves you, they celebrate your growth even if it scares them. They don't guilt you into shrinking. They don't weaponize your past to limit your future. Stay away from anyone who, directly or subtly, asks you to stay small, silent, or stuck just to ease their fear of change. Your growth is not a betrayal. It is your birthright. And now comes the second hidden ask. Give me constant emotional access. It always starts small. A late night call. A hey, can we talk for a sec? Text. That becomes a 1-hour emotional dump. A favor you feel pressured into because you're the only one who gets me. Before you know it, you're not just living your life. You're carrying someone else's emotional survival on your back. At first, it feels good, you feel needed, important, helpful. You think you're doing the right thing. But as Carl Jung warned, the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. When you begin to protect your emotional space, some people won't see it as self-care. They'll see it as betrayal. But the truth is, they've never learned to deal with their own emotional pain, so they keep handing it to you. Carl Jung once wrote, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." Here's the problem when only one side transforms. When someone pours chaos into you and leaves you alone to carry the emotional fallout, you're having a peaceful day. Focused, energized, grounded, then ping. A message appears. You won't believe what just happened. I need to vent. Suddenly, you're dragged into a storm you didn't create, but are somehow expected to conduct, and if you don't respond quickly enough, you're met with guilt. You're too busy for real friends now. You've changed. You used to care. But here's what no one tells you. Needing support is normal. Demanding unlimited access to someone's emotional energy is not. Some people don't want connection. They want an emotional servant, always available, always open. And when you start choosing yourself, healing, growing, guarding your peace, they interpret it as betrayal. Why? Because your independence threatens their dependency. Carl Jung understood this deeply. He believed that unprocessed emotional pain gets projected onto others when it isn't consciously owned. In other words, they avoid their own healing by constantly pulling you into their unresolved chaos. But here's the deeper truth. You are not someone's therapist. You are not their emotional life raft. You were not born to be a permanent dumping ground for their unhealed pain. Healthy people respect your emotional rhythms. They honor your solitude, your silence, your space. They don't punish you for having a life of your own. Stay away from anyone who demands endless emotional access and then shames you when you protect your boundaries. Because real connection doesn't cost you your peace, it protects it. Now let's move to the third hidden ask. When they make you apologize for your intuition. Some people don't try to control you by arguing with facts. They do it by making you doubt what you feel. You speak up, something doesn't feel right, and they respond, you're imagining things. You're too sensitive, you're being paranoid. At first, you question them, but if you're not careful, you start questioning yourself. Carl Jung once said, intuition gives outlook and insight. It revels in the garden of magical possibilities as if they were real. We just explored how intuition is your inner protector. But when you trust it, some people feel threatened, not because you're wrong, but because your clarity shines too brightly for their comfort. Intuition is a powerful bridge between your conscious and unconscious mind, between what you can see and what remains hidden beneath the surface. It's the silent voice of your deeper self, warning you when something doesn't feel right, even if you can't yet explain why. But here's the danger. When someone feels threatened by that clarity, they'll make you feel foolish for having it. Let's say you're in a relationship, something feels off. Maybe they avoid simple questions. Maybe their tone has grown cold. Maybe it's just that gut feeling, the one you can't quite explain, but can't ignore either. You bring it up, hoping for honesty. Instead, they laugh. You're so dramatic. You're overthinking again. Why are you always so paranoid? Slowly, that internal compass, the one trying to guide and protect you, gets buried under layers of self-doubt. Or in business, you feel something's wrong about a deal, a person, or a partnership. But everyone else around you says, relax, it's fine. You're just imagining things. If you ignore your gut, you pay the price. Carl Jung understood this deeply. He taught that intuition is the language of the deeper self, the part of you that knows, even when the mind can't explain. And when you're told over and over again that your instincts are wrong, you don't just lose trust in your feelings, you lose trust in yourself. That's when you become easy to manipulate, easy to mislead, easy to use, Because a person disconnected from their intuition is a person forced to rely on others for what's real. Here's the deeper truth. Healthy people don't mock your instincts. They respect them, even when they don't understand them fully. They say, "I hear you. Let's take a closer look. Tell me more." Because someone who truly values you also values your perception, even when it's inconvenient. Stay away from anyone who demands that you apologize for your intuition. Your gut is not your enemy. It's your oldest, most loyal guardian. And when you trust it, you stop needing permission to see the truth. And now, let's look at the fourth red flag: when they ask for forgiveness without ever changing. We just discussed how intuition protects you. But even when you follow that inner voice and realize someone is hurting you, you still might find yourself forgiving them. You confront them, they cry, they swear, "I didn't mean it," they beg, "Please don't walk away." And you, believing in grace, give them another chance. But a few weeks later, the same cycle returns. They lie again, they vanish when you need them. And once more, you realize their apology wasn't a turning point. It was a tactic to maintain access to your life. In relationships, they raise their voice. They violate your boundaries, then say, "It was just stress," or "I was having a bad day." You forgive again. But over time, your self-respect begins to erode. Not because you're weak, but because you've been manipulated into trusting their words over your own experiences. Here's the deeper trap. When you constantly forgive someone who refuses to change, you're not practicing compassion, you're slowly participating in your own erosion. Carl Jung warned, unconscious behavior, if left unchallenged, doesn't get better with time, it gets worse. The psyche defends itself with denial, minimization, and projection. And if you keep allowing someone to hurt you without demanding growth, you're not helping them evolve. You're enabling their unconsciousness. Here's the deeper truth. Forgiveness is beautiful, but forgiveness without accountability is self-betrayal. Healthy people don't just apologize, they act with integrity. They show remorse through visible, consistent effort, not just tears or well-rehearsed promises. Stay away from anyone who demands forgiveness while refusing to change. Because every time you forgive without standards, you're teaching them that hurting you comes with no real consequence. And what you tolerate today becomes the blueprint for how you'll be treated tomorrow. And now, let's talk about the fifth red flag. When someone pressures you to lower your standards just to keep them. When someone pressures you to lower your standards just to keep them, that's not love, it's quiet self-betrayal. You hold yourself to a personal code. You show up on time. You keep your promises. You strive for excellence. And they laugh it off. Why so serious? No one else cares that much. What they really mean is, please dull your brilliance, so I don't have to face my own mediocrity. Here's the psychological truth. People who feel ashamed of their laziness, dishonesty, or disorganization will always resent the mirror your standards hold up to them. Rather than rise to meet you, they'll pressure you to fall. Because it's easier to dim your light than to confront their own shadows. Carl Jung captured it best. If you compromise your soul just to belong, you don't truly belong. Lowering your standards doesn't create real connection. It creates quiet resentment. First within yourself, then inevitably between you and them. The deeper truth is this: healthy people respect your standards, even when those standards challenge them to grow. They may stumble, they may struggle, but they don't shame you for wanting a better life for yourself and for those around you. Stay away from anyone who, with words, actions, or silence, asks you to abandon your values just to make them feel more comfortable. Because every time you lower your bar to accommodate someone else, you send a silent message to your own soul: you are not worth protecting. And once you begin living at someone else's level, the road back to your true one is long and painful. But here's the uncomfortable truth: it's not just about them, it's about you. It's about what parts of yourself you're willing to give up just to keep someone standing next to you. When you tolerate people who demand unlimited emotional access, when you ignore your intuition because they told you to, when you keep forgiving someone who never grows, when you shrink your standards just to hold on. You're not being kind. You're not being noble. You're betraying the very instincts designed to protect. Carl Jung said, "The greatest tragedies don't come from being betrayed by others. They come from the moments when we betray ourselves." Every time you silence your inner voice to avoid conflict, every time you forgive without change, every time you dim your light so someone else doesn't feel small, you send a message to your subconscious, "I'm not worth fighting for." But what happens when you stop living that way? The next page reveals the turning point you've been waiting for. When you live your life for others, you don't just lose your peace, you lose yourself. The more you send the message that your voice doesn't matter, the quieter that voice becomes. Until one day, you look in the mirror, and you no longer recognize the person staring back. Understand this: you are not here to be someone else's emotional sponge. Not here to be endlessly understanding while they endlessly misunderstand you. Not here to fold yourself into smaller shapes, just so broken people can feel whole for a moment. You were not created to live a life of constant negotiation with your own worth. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Not who others need you to be, not who others expect you to be, but who you were always meant to be, before you started bending under the weight of other people's comfort." So remember, the people who ask you to give up your peace, your instincts, your standards, aren't asking for love. They're asking for your slow, quiet destruction. And you must decide, will you abandon yourself to belong, or will you finally belong to yourself? If you remember one thing today, let it be this: you don't owe your life to people who only show up to drain it. You don't owe forgiveness to those who refuse to change. You don't owe an apology for trusting your instincts. You don't owe anyone an explanation for having standards. But you do owe yourself. You owe yourself loyalty. You owe yourself peace. You owe yourself the kind of love you keep trying to give away to people who don't even know how to receive it. Carl Jung understood this well. The real battle isn't out there. It's in here, inside. Every time you choose yourself, your truth, your path, your instincts, you are healing generations of silent betrayals. You're becoming the person you were always meant to be, before the world told you to. Negotiate your worth. So stay awake, stay strong, stay loyal to yourself, even when it's lonely. Especially when it's lonely, because the people truly worthy of your life will never ask you to abandon yourself to earn their love. They'll rise to meet your standard or step aside for those who can. You are not here to be understood by everyone. You are here to be loved by the few who can truly see you. And if this message resonated with you, if even a small part of you woke up while listening, don't let it fade. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you're ready to stop abandoning yourself, subscribe and stay. Because around here, we rise without apology. If today you chose yourself over compromise, you've already won. Hit subscribe to keep growing with me in a space where you never have to apologize for being who you truly are.